Hi there guys, so yeah, my name's Jackson Rawlings. My talk is outreaching for the toughest of clients. I am currently the digital content and PR campaign manager at Site Visibility. Prior to that I worked at the Mail doing outreach for them. I was the outreach manager. So for any of you not familiar with the Mail, I mean, where have you been if that is the case, but they are a quite kind of controversial news site. There's the print edition of the newspaper, the Daily Mail, and then there's the online version, which is what I was working for. They're kind of known for a few dodgy things, supporting the Nazis in the 30s, mentioning house prices in every single article that they write for some reason or other, going on about cancer all the time. They're obsessed with it. These are some of the things that they say cause cancer. Old people, I'm not sure if that's being an old person or being around them, but either way. Babies, so the other end of the scale. Again, I don't know if it's being a baby or being around them. Cats, apparently, which is, you know, if there's any cat lovers. Dogs, so you're sort of limiting the pet options a little bit here. Being a woman. Being a man. All of those foods. Yeah, I mean, what's the point? You know, if you can't have bacon, then there's no point in living, really, is there? That's my personal favourite. I'm still not really, not quite sure what that means, to be honest with you. But anyway, so yeah, the Mail Online is the website of the Daily Mail, and it's, aside from all of the kind of Nazis and cancer stuff, it's not got the best reputation because it publishes things like this, which. Yeah, I can make a sandwich. I don't know if anyone else here can. And this, which is, you know, quite banal kind of stuff, really. This as well, which is sort of just disgusting. That one I don't even understand. It's just really quite banal again, and same banal kind of stuff. But aside from all of that, the jokes and everything, they are doing things right. They've recently just overtaken the New York Times to become the most visited English language website in the world, news site in the world. And they're really kind of making inroads in America. They've recently hired Piers Morgan and John Steinberg as CEO of North America. He's the ex-founder of BuzzFeed and has quite a lot of experience kind of pushing ads targeting, so that's, you can kind of see the direction that they're trying to go in is really infiltrate the American market. It's basically, it's a real media behemoth now. It's successfully managing the transition from print to digital. Their revenue kind of stream mainly still comes from the print edition, but the trend is reversing, and within the next couple of years we are going to be looking at the online version really taking the chunk of making the chunk of their money. So yeah, I mean, what I was doing at the Mail was outreach, as I say. It was working across SEO, analytics, tech teams, and also occasionally with the frontline reporters and editors. So among other things, yeah, that was always going to happen, that picture. Among other things, I was kind of hired to help overhaul some of the non-existent the bad outreach practices and in a lot of cases non-existent SEO and outreach practices that the company had kind of been going ahead with prior to this, and it was kind of mainly geared towards a broken link building campaign. There's a bit of background on that. There's a lot of links on the web, a lot of sites on the web that point links to the wrong URLs for the Daily Mail because it's quite a generic brand name. People always get it wrong, so you end up with things like the Mail Online or dailymail.co.uk, thedailymail.co.uk instead of dailymail.co.uk. What this means is that you end up having 301s pointing to the sites are owned by the Mail, and you end up with them pointing the 301s to the correct URL. A little bit of background on the 301s kind of aspect. It was quite a key part of what I was doing. The Mail, it was obviously a news site, it will break a story, and as the story develops, they might have to change the URL of it as new developments come in. So occasionally this can happen 3-4 times depending on the story, and that means that if they've put in 301s in place, 301 redirects in place each time that URL changes themselves, and then people are linking to the original story via a broken or wrong URL that also has a 301 in place, you end up with this piling on of redirects, and that isn't really very good. According to Matt Cutts, it's, you know, a 301 on its own is no different really to a link in terms of the value that it passes, but when you pile them on like this, it does get a bit iffy. You don't get the same value from the links, and you end up with the Google bots, they just sort of stop crawling after about the third, fourth redirect. So the main reason that I was kind of hired was to help fix these broken links, get these links sorted out, and we're talking kind of a broken link building campaign on a mass scale, tens of thousands of links we're talking about here. So yeah, I mean, my kind of day-to-day job was contacting bloggers, websites, and asking them to change these broken links to the correct URL. And so yeah, some of the responses that I had from people, as you would expect with the client that I was working with, were not the most pleasant in the world. I got in touch with someone who, oh sorry, this is, yeah, I'm a redirects nerd, so if you have any information about 301s, please come and grab me. But that was the response I got. I think the daily Heil bit's quite original, you know. It's, but anyway, he was clearly not a big fan of us and wasn't willing to work with us really. So, you know, what do you do in that situation when someone's kind of being quite het up about stuff with you? Do you just leave it? Do you just kind of say, well, you know, write that one off as a learning experience, or do you actually respond and try and, you know, turn the relationship around? I went with the second option. I tried to sort of turn the relationship around, and kind of paraphrasing what I said, it was, you know, I understand your point of view. We're not the most liked site in the world, but I think from the point of view of your readers, they'd be, you know, appreciative if your site was up to date and correct. And I wasn't expecting much back from that, to be honest. I thought he might, you know, you never know, but he actually came back and said that. I'm still not sure if he was joking or not, to be honest, but I never did, so I never did get in touch. But yeah, so I mean, it's a case of, you know, not always, essentially a no isn't always a no in outreach. And that's kind of a key point to take away from this, is that the perseverance and aspect of outreach is key, particularly with difficult clients. You are going to face a lot of abuse to some extent of that kind, and if you can even just turn it around just a slightly bit, it's all about the margins. You know, if you can get that one person to change their mind and actually do something, you might have just caught them on a bad day. They might have not had their morning coffee. You know, it's that kind of thing. So I think you have to kind of have some rules in place in your mind, and I say rules very much in sort of air quotes, because there are, you know, always exceptions to this, but I think that there are some really bad ways that you can respond to this kind of negativity, and when you are working with outreach with clients that have tough reputations, you do end up receiving quite a lot of negativity. So one thing that you shouldn't do is get defensive or take it personally. That's not, you know, it's not productive. It's not going to get you anywhere. Some people are just not pleasant really, or people just don't like you. So there's always going to be that, and it's not your, you know, it's not your fault. It's not something you should be getting wound up by. And equally, they're rising to it. Swearing back is obviously a really big no-no. But anything kind of where you're being angry back to them, where you're responding to them in the way they've responded to you is not the way to go. Posting anything about it on social media, I know that's kind of a thing that people quite use it. They use social media for a sort of sphere to vent and to rant and that sort of stuff, but this isn't the place for that kind of thing. And yeah, persevering beyond the no too much. So I know I said, you know, you could persevere if someone says no, but I think if you email someone, they come back and say no, you then ask them, you know, give them reasons why you think they should reconsider, and they still say no, that's probably when to leave it. It's carry on beyond that, and you're getting into a bit sort of dodgy territory there. So the key thing really is that you need to be able to understand people's motivations in outreach. That's a massive factor in determining whether or not you're going to be successful in outreach. And it was kind of a very it's a very difficult area to get right, because it means having to be aware of the kind of pain points and the problems that people are facing on a daily basis, and do your best to try and fix them. Really, that's a real key element of it. So I mean, as I said, that was the bulk of my job, sort of trying to fix these URLs. But also, there were other things that I was doing. I actually once contacted a network of football blogs. So they had kind of a blog for each of the major teams in Europe and in England. And some of these sites were using our RSS feeds for their content. They had a kind of breaking news widget on their site. And for some of the teams, they were using them, some of them they weren't, and I was kind of confused as to why that was. So I got in touch and asked him, you know, what the reasoning was. For one of them, it was the Liverpool blog. We had hired a guy called Kelvin Mackenzie, who was the editor of The Sun at the time of the Hillsborough disaster, and The Sun published quite a sort of scathing front page about the Hillsborough disaster, saying that the fans had played a role in it and this kind of thing. And so Liverpool fans and people from Liverpool generally are still quite, you know, aggrieved by this, and understandably. So he wasn't keen on using our content as long as Kelvin Mackenzie had, you know, had that association with us on that specific blog. But when it came to some of the other blogs, and I hope there's no one, you know, sorry if any fans are here, but you know, the smaller teams, the West Broms and the Stokes and people like that in the Premiership who don't get written about as much as Chelsea or Man United. He felt like it wasn't worth his while implementing all of this on his site to have this widget with the breaking news. So from his point of view, he had a problem. His problem was he couldn't get fresh content on his site. He couldn't get enough fresh content on these smaller teams' blogs. And so what I kind of explained to him was that actually the Mail is one of the most prolific, by far, most prolific news sites out there, particularly within sport, and so there was a very high chance that actually this was going to happen. That there was going to be a piece published at least once a day, maybe more, about these teams. So it was worth him implementing this on his site so that he could have this fresh content. And essentially, what I did there was recognise this problem, this pain point that he had, and addressed it. And he was much more responsive with everything that followed because I'd kind of solved an issue for him. He also agreed to link editorially on the Liverpool blog to Mail content, with the caveat that if there was any other better source, then he'd use them instead. But still, it's the small margins. And you know, this was a very active, engaged network of blogs. And essentially, what happened was that the content exposure was doubled across this set of blogs. We went from 10 blogs using the widgets, using the RSS feeds, to over 25, including some sort of European teams and stuff. So with not that much work, and only having to kind of work out where this guy was, what his motivations were, what his pain points were, I was able to double the content exposure on that network. So, I mean, the best relationships in life and in outreach are those that are mutually beneficial, and that's kind of a big thing, is making the most of relationships, making the most of beneficial relationships for each person. And there are sort of I've been through the sort of 5 ways you shouldn't respond necessarily to negativity, but there are also some real kind of positive ways to respond. Keep it light and jovial when you're talking to people, and that is something that I would really kind of hammer home for anyone doing outreach, that I often receive emails from people that are kind of real like template format emails, really formal, quite kind of, it doesn't feel personal in any way, and that's a key thing, is having that ability to be personal and personable with the people you're talking to. And I mean, as I said, be aware of their motivations and be empathetic towards them. You know, these people are often, particularly bloggers, are, you know, running other jobs at the same time, and they've got kids to deal with and all of this sort of stuff, same as everyone else, and just be empathetic to their needs. You know, they're not there to do your work for you. Be polite. It's a very basic one, but people, I still get emails from people that I would consider, you know, unpolite and impolite, and that's until every email I get is like that, I will be banging on about it all the time. So. And finally, from this point, is going the extra mile, and I'd like to sort of talk a little bit about that. I think there's most of what everyone does in life, and this is quite a depressing point, most of what everyone does in life is quite average. That's by definition what it is. So if you go that little bit further and do something slightly out of the ordinary, you really do stand out, and in outreach that's really useful. It's something that people can grab hold of. There was a site that I got in contact with. They agreed to change these broken links, and then towards the end of our kind of conversation, I thought, well, it might be worth seeing if there's anything we could do for them in return. You know, just something nice, something quick and easy. And the lady that I was talking to said she would actually really appreciate it if I was able to send her an email each day with the 5 top US focused stories that were kind of centered around a specific niche that their site was interested in. And from our point of view, that was an easy thing to do. I could get on in the morning, quickly search in our data and find the 5 biggest stories of the day, US focused ones, and send that to her, and it took me all of about 30 seconds, a minute to do that. For her, on the other hand, it would have taken her however long to trawl through either our site or other sites as well, and then having to kind of pick out in her mind what these best articles were. So the result of that was that over the course of a couple of weeks, couple of months, I started seeing links appearing on her site. He kept checking it back every now and again, and links would appear back to the mail without really any work done at all. Okay, 30 seconds in the morning. It was the first thing I did. It was a simple routine, and actually it started to yield results. And after about 6 months, it was appearing almost every day, at least one link out of the 5 that I sent across. So you know, for a site like the Mail, that's quite a drop in the ocean. But if you scale that up across multiple sources, different people, if I did that for 5 people or 10 people instead of just that one, then we would have been talking about a lot more links, and that's you know, really quite a positive approach. So it's a kind of form of karma, really. It's that kind of doing something nice for someone and you get something nice in return. It's not an exact science, and I know that a lot of us here as marketers and people interested in the digital industry, we like to have that data and that kind of definitive proof and causation and correlation and all that kind of stuff. But it's not as easy as that in outreach a lot of the time. You end up having to kind of play the numbers and work out, you know, what works for you. And ultimately, it does help to build reputation and build trust, which is quite key for clients that have got bad reputations in the first place. So it's all well and good being able to transform negative relationships into positive ones, but what you can't be doing is having to constantly do that. If you're working in a company and all you're doing is constantly sorting out other people's mistakes historically, then you've got a problem, and you need to address the root of that problem. You need to find out what it is that is going wrong. Why have they got such a bad reputation in the first place? So I worked with the SEO manager at the Mail to kind of put together a best practice guide for attribution and linking out, because that was a massive pain point of people that I spoke to. I spoke to bloggers and site owners who said that the Mail had often, let's say, borrowed bits of their content without correctly attributing it to them. Not full articles, not that kind of stuff, and often from places where there was multiple sources, and it was quite difficult to kind of tie down who had the rights over it anyway. But still, things where you could ordinarily link back, they weren't doing. When I spoke to a tech site who said they'd be more than happy to change the broken links to our site if we were happy to put in these links that were missing from them, which is, you know, quite an easy thing to do. And when I spoke to the relevant sub-editor about this, asking him why we hadn't been linking, he said to me that he was told not to do that. He'd never been told that linking out was a good policy. I think it was quite sort of an old school approach. In the early days of internet, it was kind of, you know, get someone on the site and keep them there as long as possible. You don't want to put any external links on there so that they're going off anywhere. And that's not the way that the internet works. As you know, as we heard in the earlier talk, it's about finding people in the correct context and finding people in the right point in their sort of buying cycle, whether that's for a product or whether it's for a piece of content. It's about getting them to come back again. So I think a lot of people focus on bounce rate as a metric. They think that this is the be all and end all. And obviously, if you've got a 99% bounce rate, then you're doing something wrong. But equally, it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. It's just a metric, it's just an indicator for you. So keep an eye on what your return rate is, keep an eye on other metrics in line with that, is what I would say. So yeah, unfortunately, I left the mail before was this kind of ORM plan, effectively, an online reputation management plan was put in place with regards to the linking out policy. So I haven't seen how that's kind of gone, whether or not they're actually implementing it fully at the moment, I'm not sure. But the key thing was that we struggled. The reason that we never really got that off the ground was we struggled to get the buy-in from the people on the front line. It's very important to get buy-in, not just from the senior management and the directors and everyone, but from the people on the front line doing the work, creating the content, whether there's the designers or the SEO execs or whatever. These are the people that are actually going to be doing the work. So you want to make sure that they are fully on board with your policies and your best practices. Otherwise, all you're going to be doing is constantly having to fight back against the mistakes. Everything you do could be eroded instantly by their sort of mistakes. So what I would say really is that outreach is, particularly outreach for difficult clients, for clients with tough reputations, as I've said, is it's not an individual task. It's not something that can be done by one person. Okay, I can sit there and I can call people up, I can send the emails, but if the rest of my team, the rest of my company aren't on board with this as a concept, that we are trying to improve the reputation of the company through outreach, then it's wasted. It's a wasted effort on everyone's part. So I'd say that the most important things I would advise you to take away from this talk are, when it comes to outreach, a no isn't always a no. As I said, carry on persevering with that if you can, to a certain extent. Don't go too far with it equally, but go beyond that first no if you can. As far as possible, respond to negativity with positivity, which is probably quite a good philosophy for life as well generally, but certainly within outreach, you're not going to get anything by coming back at them in the same way that they've come back to you. Understand people's motivations and pressure points and pain points. It's so important, because if you're able to identify what effectively what their weaknesses are, and if you can strengthen them for them, they'll love you forever, basically. Go the extra mile. Again, it's a key thing that was something that people think that means going the extra mile means inconveniencing yourself. That is not the case. You can just do small things. Small margins can make a huge difference in this business. And finally, address the root of the problem, the reputation problem, straight away. There's no point starting with something else. We're working with a client at the moment at Site Visibility who they have quite a bad reputation online. They have some dodgy reviews all over the place, and a key part of our agreement with them to actually take them on as a client was that they had to implement a new customer service policy, customer service strategy, and also update their kind of reviews process, their complaints pages, that kind of thing. And the reason we said that to them and made that the first priority from our point of view in terms of the work we did was because everything else we did after that would have been useless if we hadn't have done that. If we hadn't have laid those foundations and put them in place, then there would have been no point doing it in the first place. And so essentially what I'm saying is that you have to get those basics down before you can start. You know, we could have spent ages building their social followings and whatever else, but if their social following was 10,000 people all complaining about them, then it's not really useful, is it? So one final thought, I guess, is that outreach it doesn't need to be complicated. It can be difficult, it can be hard when you're constantly battling against people that are not particularly fond of you, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It's a very simple thing. It's a natural part of what we do. Outreach really is just another word for human communication, for interaction. And we're all, you know, good at it to a greater or lesser extent, but it's something that is just a part of being human. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't feel like you've got to create huge pieces of content to, you know, interest them. Sometimes just being yourself, just being personable with them is the best practice, the best way to go. And the results tend to speak for themselves. So I mean, if any of you are considering adopting an outreach kind of program or hiring some people to do outreach for you, I would recommend it highly. I would, obviously, because it's part of my job. But the results do have a huge impact in the long run, particularly when it comes to reputation management. It's something that I think cannot be done. Reputation management cannot be done without outreach as a core kind of process within that. And that's kind of it, really. As I said, if anyone's got any ideas or knowledge about 301s and the link juice and that kind of stuff, come and grab me afterwards, or tweet me, or yeah, you can tweet me on my awful Twitter handle there, which is Jackson H Raw, or email me as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy the rest of the talks. Thank you.